chip on my shoulder.
We gathered the 3 most successful coaches in Chicago basketball history. They combined 13 state championship rings.
Once you give it, you can't get it back.
Coming together to give Chicago the show it deserves.
What a play by Terry Kelly.
Of the best basketball culture in the world. This is 13 Rings. Nick LoGalbo, Lane Tech. We got Mike Ellis from Evanston.
Really appreciate you guys coming and being on with us today. Again, we have so much respect for the both of you, and that's one of the things that Gordon said. Sports bring us all together.
But just the racial tension in our country, I do want to just say to Rob and Ty, being strong African-American men in our city means a lot.
RICHWOODS, Simeon Wolverines.
Here we go.
31-29.
We played a 2-3 zone the entire game, and I can't stand zone defense. Like, I hate it.
Ty and I got that sneaker war going on in our game. So I got some heat coming for you this.
Okay.
But no, I mean,
Now, come on now, Nick. You know better than that.
Semifinals of the state, you down 1, you get the rebound, and there's 10 seconds on the clock. Do you call timeout or do you keep it?
The reason that you're going to let him potentially call the timeout is because then you'll still be able to set up. I'm not going to take a chance that he's not going to call that timeout.
You know, because when you allow the clock to stop, the other team to coach the defense up, it's a little more challenging.
The Olympics, the Dream Team, I just became infatuated with USA basketball. It's the gold standard of everything. That DeAndre Liggins was on that team, who right before he signed with the Cavs. Alfonso McKinney was on that team, and I played against Will Bynum. You're like, oh man, I mean, I've never seen anything like that.
Did you have to guard him?
Yeah, I mean, for a second, they were going to keep me on him. I was too slow.
The best unselfish player
Was great as a player, Paul White.
Just got out of the backyard. Doing it just now, man.
And even if the state actually says it's a goal, which we anticipate and hope that they will next week, I think you have so many different school districts around the state.
It's not a good question. We're stirring the pot.
Yeah.
All right, it's episode 6 of 13 Rings. We have 227 years of basketball history joining us in the podcast. We got a theme every week. We've done a West Side theme. We've done the coaches that have won rings in the public league. Today's the North Side theme, and this is really cool for me because I grew up in the northern suburbs, very plugged in with the scene there, and so we're very fortunate to welcome a couple of special guests here. Nick is on the road. He's on special assignment recruiting. He just picked up Ramin Hinton, so he's very excited to be bringing him into the Leatherneck family. We've got Nick LoGalbo, Lane Tech. We got Mike Ellis from Evanston, who's also going to give us a little bit of a downstate flavor, being a former Peoria RICHWOODS coach, and very plugged in with that scene. We got a lot of people watching all parts of the state, so excited to get to a bunch of topics. But right now, the most newsworthy thing is IHSA keeps pushing back their announcement about voluntary workouts. And I'm curious because you guys are the most plugged in people in the state when it comes to this thing. I'd love to just hear about 15 seconds each. What are you going through right now? And what's the level of confusion that you have as you try to make a plan for the summer here?
Well, I'll go first. Just trying to stay in tune with what's going on. Of course, the players and everybody is trying to figure out, if it's going to be, spring basketball, are we going to have contact days? Are we going to get back in the gym? Just those things. And for me, I'm the athletic director at the school, so I have to figure out the stuff for football and all these other different sports because they want to know what's going on. So just trying to stay in tune with the IHSA and see what they come up with.
For me, I think the thing that I struggle with, I think all of us as coaches and all coaches around our state, is really the uncertainty of not knowing what's what. And even if the state actually says it's a goal, which we anticipate and hope that they will next week, I think you have so many different school districts around the state that will be making some individualized decisions on what they're going to do for their own district. So that adds a whole nother level of uncertainty. And then, of course, with CPS not getting out of school until literally the middle of summer, it makes it even that much more difficult for us as to whether or not we'll be able to have contact with our student athletes, even if, in fact, the state does open it up. So I think the thing that we most struggle with is the uncertainty, an incredible amount of log cabin, fever, just trying to get back into the game that we all love and the kids want to get back. And it's just so much that goes into it. And the unfortunate part is as coaches, a lot of times we have all the answers in relation to a lot of things. This is one of those instances where we really have zero answers, and we're just at the mercy of a lot of different factions right now.
All right, so
yeah, I would agree with.
Yeah, and I know you got the steaks on the grill. That's number one, and you got a baby on the way. So that's very high right now. But after that is going to be getting your guys back in for workouts. So what are you hearing from your end at Lane Tech?
Yeah, so, like Ty and Rob in the Chicago Public League, and like Rob, I'm also the athletic director at Lane. So we were supposed to have a call Thursday with CPS Sports Administration, and that was canceled pretty much last minute. I actually jumped on the call, and there was one other guy on there with me. We're just sitting around not knowing it was canceled. And then there was supposed to be a call with the IADA, the Athletic Directors Association, and that was pushed back, all because, the IHSA is still trying to figure out what's what. And then as Ty and Rob have alluded, like, even so, and Mike's already said kind of before we started talking, like, every district is going to have their own deal. So the way I'm looking at it is I'm just preparing for the worst. Every district's going to be different, even when the IHSA rules. So I'm going into this thinking, if I have no contact, what are we going to do? So I've just been sending a lot of film to our guys. Every week, been sending different film breakdowns. I just bought a hoop and put it together this weekend, so I'm going to be doing some video workouts to record and send to our guys to keep them busy. But I'm preparing for the worst, to be honest with you.
Can you send me some of those workouts? I want to see you back down your kids.
Just got out of the backyard. I'm doing it just now, man. I've been a little guard my whole life, so I get a chance to post somebody up. I'm taking advantage.
Hey, we spent a good half hour the other day talking about strong guards like Randy Brown and Tim Hardaway. So
yeah,
you'd be next in line in the guard strength category.
Yes, sir.
All right, so Coach Mike Ellis, what's the perspective from Evanston? What are you hoping to do? What are you expecting? What's something that isn't getting talked about?
Yeah, one thing in our situation is, I guess, along with Nick and Rob, our athletic director, Chris Livatino, those are the three best athletic directors in the state of Illinois. So, it's great when you have an athletic director that you trust, has a great relationship with the principal and superintendent, because inevitably the IHSA is going to make a ruling. That's going to have to be in line with Governor Pritzker in the state of Illinois. And then that's all going to have to mesh to whatever plan your school develops going forward. So I agree a lot with what Ty said. A lot of these times we've had questions, and then the answers to those questions are more questions. So we haven't really had anything definitive. So I'm looking forward to advancing through these different phases that our government has put together, which hopefully will happen before the end of August, where we can get advanced and get back in with our student athletes and get some contact days.
Are you guys hearing the same thing that I'm hearing? Because I talk to people who are in, they have to get these proposals drafted and then approved before they're announced. And I've talked to people that are making these proposals that they're sending to IDPH and things like that. And they're saying that the IHSA is just as antsy as you guys, basically, that this is not like the IHSA holding this up. I think they've kind of got dragged into that, but it sounds to me like they wanted this to happen a while ago, and they're just waiting from clearance above them. Is that what you're hearing too?
Yeah, I am as athletic directors. That's what we're kind of hearing. Like, they just trying to get clearance from the health departments and all those people that things are going to be in place when they do let you go back, or if it does go back, so that they can have stuff in place for the coaches, the athletic directors, and the schools. So I don't think it's primarily right now the IHSA. I think they're just waiting on these, the health department myself. That's what I'm gathering that they're waiting on. Just from some of the emails that I've received from them, it's pretty much them waiting on the health department. Interesting.
Is that, Nick, were you about to say the same thing?
I was just going to say, I'm going to be honest. I've been really impressed with the emails I've been receiving from the IHSA. They did a cool social media thing, and I mean, there's still a lot they don't know, but I think I get the vibe that they do want to get this thing going. But there's like everyone said, there's just so much uncertainty, and there's so much we don't know, and everyone's feeling the same thing. And it's one thing to wait a little while and roll it out, make sure everyone's safe. You roll it out too early and you have to dial it back, then you have a lot more headaches. So caution is definitely needed here.
So Mike, there's that Office Depot on Green Bay Road. Are you going over there to get some bubble wrap? Like how are you going to be safe when you do go back? I mean, what's your plan?
Well, the way it's being rolled out, honestly, it's in a pause right now. But the common theme that all these entities are that they're practicing is they're making sure that our students are safe. So that helps us. I think as coaches, we want to make sure we don't put our student athletes in harm's way. And the fact that the IHSA is being cautious, the government, the state of Illinois is being cautious. Our schools, athletic directors are making sure they do the right thing. The common thread of all of this uncertainty right now is the safety of our student athletes. So that's what helps us as coaches to make sure that we're not up at night worrying and wondering what's next, is we can be confident that they're going to make the right decisions.
Interesting. Is there anything that you feel like hasn't gotten mentioned? Anything? I don't mean in this conversation, but is there one piece of this puzzle that you feel like people are missing when you see the Facebook posts from parents and fans, et cetera?
I think in terms of trying to get our players or student athletes back on the basketball court, this summer is going to get compacted into a brief period of time. So now you're going to talk about convergence of, the fall athlete, what are their needs for summer training? The AAU athlete, what are their needs for summer training? The high school basketball player, what are their needs for summer training? So I think there's going to be a lot of what ifs and uncertainties when we compact what's normally approximately 3 months for us and 2.5 months for the CPS coaches. When we compact that into 5 or 6 weeks, how is that going to look? Again, I'm confident that the number one thing is the safety of these children. So the people that are making these decisions, they've showed me nothing else, but that's their priority to make sure that these kids are safe. So that gives me some ease and peace.
I think for me, the biggest challenge, or the thing that people haven't talked about, is kind of what Mike was saying, the way in which the whole season, the whole lead up to the season is going to be compacted. And I think the biggest loser in this whole thing is going to be the student athlete, because ultimately they're going to have to be able to deliver on 4 months worth of Zoom videos that we've learned, different drills, all of that. We're going to compact that into a very short period of time. And I'm kind of joking about it, but very seriously, I think as a coach, and I would imagine all of the coaches on here are the same. We all kind of we live in kind of a, and I'm looking for the right word. We're kind of like, we live in patterns, and we do things in a pattern. We're out of season, and we take off a month. Then we start getting geared up to get back into the game, and then we know we're going to have June, and we're going to do a little bit. We're going to roll out a little bit, and then we're back in conditioning in the fall, and then we're playing. I think we go right from having our seasons ended, all of our seasons ended at some level, right back to basically being away for 4 months, and then we're right back to it, and we're full tilt again. I think in some ways that cheats our student athletes, because when it's all said and done, you don't want to ever be able to download a million things at one time. You'd like to be able to give it to them a little bit at a time. Now, the difference is with Evanston, they've got a veteran team. They've been downstate 3 years in a row, so it doesn't matter. They don't even need this free time. They can just start right away. They can just start right out. They can just start right out. Right now. Just right now. We're ready to go.
I love it. Well, that's a great segue into the next part that I like to do, which is profiling these two great guests here who have stakes and kids and families waiting for them. They still came on the 13 Rings podcast. very impressive. I was compiling sort of your list of credentials before this, and it spilled over into a second page here just because you guys are both so big on the on-court stuff, but also maybe even more involved with the off-court stuff. Starting off just top to bottom here with Nick, you took over Lane Tech in 2008, and it seems like you've got your hand in about 5 different things between USA Basketball. I see that. Is that a Duke ball over your right shoulder there? Is that from one of your camps?
Yeah, I worked at Duke camp. Went to St. Helens where Coach K went. So since I've been a little kid, I've been kind of a Coach K disciple, if you will. So.
Did you really? Okay.
Yeah.
And then remind me the name of it's the Northwest Side high school that he went to that shut down. What was that called again?
That Coach K went to? He went to Weber. That's correct. Weber,
okay. Which is that in Norwood, or was it in Norwood Park?
It's so now it's Northwest Middle. It was off of Fullerton.
Okay.
Northwest side, yeah.
Cool. I love that. I didn't realize you had the connection there. That's awesome. Also, I know you're involved with combating gun violence and that you care deeply about your kids and your community off the court too here. And you've had multiple 21 seasons, and you've really got that. I know they're unique challenges. If you're an academic magnet school like that, there are oftentimes challenges. What's the story of you getting that job? Well, I guess just take a step back. I love asking, who was your Chicago basketball hero when you were growing up, and what neighborhood did you grow up in?
Well, I mean, obviously for me, it comes down to 2 basketball heroes. I mean, Mike. I mean, that's the obvious, easy answer. But rewatching all these Last Dances, I mean, I've rewatched every one, and my wife go to sleep, and I'm up till 1 a.m. just rewatching them. I mean, I just bought some Olympic 7s. Ty and I got that sneaker war going on in our game. So I got some heat coming for you this.
Okay.
But no, I mean,
come on now, Nick. You know better than that.
No,
you know better than that. Come on now. Don't do that. Don't do that.
He came out with some off-white breads, and then at halftime switched to the off-white UNC.
No.
My whole school has been roasting me because I came out with some green and white Sakai's thinking I had some heat, but. Anyway, let's not talk about that. That's still.
But you tipped me off that you were going to wear the Sakai.
I know.
I had to step my game up.
Yeah, man. But no. So Mike, I mean, I grew up on Chicago and Ashland. So I don't even know what neighborhood you call that. Everyone asks me that. I think that. I mean, it's not Ukrainian Village. It's not. The Loop. It's. I mean.
Like River West.
Yeah, River West. It's just southwest or southeast of Bucktown. But I grew up in a family. We're an Italian family. My whole family lived in a 3-flat.
Wait, LoGalbo is I thought you were Korean.
Yeah, man. Big Italian family. Pasta dinner every Sunday. But we had a 3-flat apartment that we all lived, different floors, and then we had a double lot. So I had a basketball court, which is very rare in the city. So I mean, I was a junkie about it, obsessed with Jordan, had all of his shoes, and studied him like crazy. But I think when I got to be like 8th grade and I realized that I wasn't going to be 6'6" and a dominant 2, and I was going to be a little point guard, I really started studying other guys, and I really started to fall in love with other Chicago legends. I mean, I couldn't be a fan of Isaiah Thomas because of the Mike Isaiah, but Tim Hardaway early, because the Heat teams were so good at that time, was a big Chicago guy for me that I started watching, and obviously we're all fans of D Rose and everything, but for me, another Chicago guy is Coach K, as we just alluded to. A guy who played in the city, a guy who played Division I and was coaching, has been coaching and just at a high level. So he's been the guy that I've studied too. So. And
then I'm really curious to hear about your Team USA interactions. What's kind of been the coolest experience for you where you're like, man, I can't believe I get a chance to do this?
Is
there a camp you're at where, Dr. J walks by or anything like that? Or, I mean, what's been your experiences?
So it's surreal. I think when I was a little kid in that 92 Jordan team with the Olympics, the Dream Team, I just became infatuated with USA basketball. It's the gold standard of everything. That basketball is my passion. It's my love, and USA is the ultimate standard. So since I was a little kid, I've just been kind of infatuated with it and studying it. And I got to know Coach Showalter through working his camp at Snow Valley, and just my interactions with him, and then gotten to meet the USA people. And I've been involved really in 3 different avenues with them. Their youth development division. So I've been doing youth clinics in the city for them whenever they call I work with the 3-on-3 because that's now an Olympic sport. So I've been kind of a regional coordinator for them to put on 3-on-3 qualifying tournaments. And I've been out to the Olympic Training Center multiple times to help work the national event. A lot of Chicago guys won the silver medal some time back. So that was cool. And then now getting to work with the junior national team. This would have been my fourth camp in April at the Final Four, but that got obviously canceled due to Corona. But we've been on calls and just connecting with those guys. It's been surreal. It's been still pinching myself and just very honored, obviously. So.
And you said there's a bunch of Chicago guys won the silver medal, which.
Yeah. So Steph Hanna, DeAndre Liggins was on that team who right before he signed with the Cavs. Alfonso McKinney was on that team. And that was, a lot of people say, that kind of got him his break into the league, and he got
really?
that because they won the silver medal. It was a very high profile event for them, and he ended up getting signed with the Raptors and then ultimately over to Golden State. And so no, man, they were the real deal, man. And they actually won the qualifier that we put on in Chicago. They got them out there, and then they won the national deal, and then went on to hoop. And there was a lot of Mike McCall was out there hooping, and just a bunch of Chicago guys. So trying to keep that pipeline going.
That's awesome. I saw Alfonso McKinney's #1 NBA game when he came to the United Center. The Warriors put up, I think it was 92 points in the first half. And I think Alfonso had like 18 points. And I went up to him afterwards, and I didn't realize that he had, all of the Chicago connections that he did. Hadn't got a chance to meet him until that point. So that's so cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. And, how do you what is your interaction with Coach K at these camps? Do you get a chance to pick his brain? Do you bring that back to Lane Tech?
I I try to really, I try to pick everyone, including these three fine young men on this podcast. All three of these coaches have been mentors to me too. And I remember talking to Mike when he was in our Thanksgiving tournament, when I just started coaching. When I just got the head job, I was 25 and didn't know what the hell I was doing. Still don't know what the hell I'm doing. But I remember Mike just kind of took some time to talk to me, and he had just gotten the job at Evanston, and Rob and Ty have been resources. But obviously working the Duke camp for Coach K all those years, trying to pick his brain wherever I could. And now with the USA guys, I text and call them as much as I can and try to learn and just continue to be a sponge and learn as much as I can.
Before we take the spotlight off of you, most underrated player that you wish would get more attention in Chicago history?
All time?
Yeah, just like who's a player that maybe not the best, but just that you always had kind of a soft spot for and that you think needs to get more attention as either a neighborhood or a national legend?
Wow. It doesn't have to be somebody I coached against, right?
No, by no means.
Well, actually, I'll say this. I played against Will Bynum when he was coming up, and he was. For Chicago at that time, he was the real deal. He got to a Final Four at Georgia Tech, had a solid NBA career, and I think he's one of those guys that he's still around the game, still doing great things. And I just remember seeing him and playing against him and seeing him in person, just being like, oh man, I've never seen anything like that.
Did you have to guard him?
Yeah, for a second, they were going to keep me on him. I was too slow.
Tell me, we need more details. Come on, what did Will Bynum do?
It was a summer league game.
Okay.
And it was ugly, and I didn't guard him the whole game. Let's just leave that.
Love it.
That was it. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, you bring so much experience to this podcast, and you talk about somebody who's built multiple dynasties. Mike Ellis, we're putting the spotlight on you right now. You took over a historic program at Evanston. I went back into the archives, 1900 to 1901. That was the first season where the Wildcats, they probably weren't even called the Wildcats, were 2-4 that year. So we're talking about 120 years of history. And this is really like a sleeping giant. There was obviously the 1968 state champion team led by Bob Lackey, aka the Black Swan. That's legendary. There was the big run in the 80s with Everett Stevens, but you've ushered in the most successful period in Evanston Township High School basketball history. You would have had another 30-win season this year if the virus didn't knock that out. Curious to go back before we get into some of your legacy. 2006 state championship game. Peoria Richwoods. Simeon Wolverines.
Here we go.
31-29. I thought it was a lacrosse score, but it was basketball,
man.
apparently, against Coach Rob. Coach Rob, what was your first impression of Mike Ellis before we grill Mr. Ellis here?
They was a well-coached team. You know, when you watched them, they didn't have a whole lot of talent, but they had guys who bought into what he was doing. And they was a really good team. You know, it was definitely a really good team, and he used what he had to be successful. And, you know, sometimes that's kind of hard for people to kind of understand and say, well, you got this much talent, you should be blowing them out or you should be beating them. Well, he understood, you know, what his guys were and what we were as a team, and he just utilized that to kind of contain us as well as they did. They did it. I mean, it was – people don't realize I think we both shot bad from the field, just period. We weren't like we tried to make the score that way. But
Right.
we just shot that. I mean, I watched that tape a billion times just for the last shot, but it's just the fact that we shot the ball, we just couldn't make them.
Right.
Well, you had Bill Cole, the lockdown, 6'9", right? Athletic. I mean, he was a force in high school.
We did.
Boy.
Yeah. Bill was a special player. Justin Dame was another point guard for us that was a Division I player that starred at Furman for 4 years. You know, I would like to say that I just wrote the number 32 on the board in pregame, where we tell our team, hey, if we score 32 points, and I'll even give you an overtime, we can be state champs. But it didn't come out that way. You know, Coach Rob had a great team with Simeon, and obviously Derrick Rose's legend grew exponentially from that point forward. But, you know, that was back in the day, too, when you played 2 games in one day. You know, so I think it should be noted that Rob had to go up against Marshall and a very explosive Marshall team that took a lot of gas out of his team earlier that afternoon. So we both were kind of just running on fumes at that point in time later in the day on that Saturday night.
And not to cut you off, Mike, I kind of think that like Utah did with Jordan, they brought our pregame like an hour before it was time for the game.
Really? Explain more about that. Let's hear
it. Kind of threw us
that.
off. So we ordered, I mean, it's our first time down, so we don't really know. You know, like we had played, and then we trying to get some food for the guys before the next game. Well, the food doesn't come until like maybe an hour before, or hour, 30 minutes before the game tip off, but we hadn't eaten since earlier. So we let the guys eat, and we were still a little sluggish, but I was like, maybe that's some home cooking. That's Peoria. They said we're going to deliver their food later.
Are you alleging that there was did 5 guys deliver it? And
No, I think I had to go down and pick it up, and then they thought it was. But no, that it was a little. I did something with somebody else recently, and they asked me what would I do different, helping coaches who went downstate for the first time. And just having that itinerary together and understand what you need to be doing is very important. And as Mike alluded to, playing those 2 games is kind of hard. And people don't know, initially, that's why Coach Hamrick started going to Pontiac, because you would play 2 games in a day. You would play the semifinal game that morning, and then you would play the championship game that night, or semifinals. I mean, the third place game, whichever one. So that was his initial reason to go on that. So if he ever had the opportunity to make it a downstate, the kids would be used to playing 2 games that competitive in one day. You know, so, but that format is definitely gone for downstate. But that is a hard turnaround like that. I don't even know, Mike, you can say who you guys played before, so I don't even remember who you guys played.
Yeah, we played Thornwood, so it was a situation where, you know, we had a tough game in the afternoon. Again, I don't know if in 2006 we probably weren't favored in any of our games downstate. You know, we had to play Gordy Kirkman, who's one of the best coaches in the history of the state of Illinois, the day before in West Aurora. You know, so that's kind of what is another question going forward is our state tournament format. You know, a decade ago, we were dealing with one format, 2 games in the same day when it was A and 2A with just the 2 classes. And now we went to 4 classes in a separate format And I think Rob hits on a great point that, any of these coaches, my advice would be when you advance to the state finals, lean on some coaches that have been there. And I think we're all in the same boat when they unveil these new formats going forward, when they're going to have all 4 classes down the same weekend. We're all in the same boat. We don't know how that's going to go. That's one of the biggest challenges as a coach is you've got to make the decisions. When are your meals getting delivered? When are you going to do your shoot-arounds? Are your guys a little tired? Do they need to sleep in? It's a fine line to walk. And you just get nervous at that. Not necessarily nervous, but you just continue to ask questions of yourself. Am I doing the right thing for our players, at that point in time of the season? Because in 24 and 48 hours, the season's going to end. Whether that's going to end in first place, second place, third place, you feel like a lot of your decisions hinge on what you choose to do.
I'm curious to know about your ability to build, because, I work extensively with the Champaign, Decatur, Springfield schools, Peoria a little bit less, but I still, have Jim Matson and, somebody I communicate with all the time. My brother used to live in Peoria, so I'm fairly familiar. I realize that there's a lot of history at RICHWOODS with Doug Altenberger is a RICHWOODS grad. Am I right?
Yep. Yes, you are.
But, most people, they think about Central, they think about Sean Livingston, they think about Howard Nathan and, some of the manual teams, David Booth. There's just so many names. You took RICHWOODS and you made it the sexy team. And then you go to Evanston, a school that, like I said, since the Everett Stevens era, 1980s, hadn't really been as sexy as, as it is now. So you've done it twice now. What's the first step that you take when you take over these jobs that helps you turn the corner?
Honestly, it's just one word. It's relationships. You have to develop and establish relationships at a new school where the student athletes believe in you and your cause and your culture, and you believe in them. You show those student athletes that you care just as much for them as you would your own sons and daughters. I think that's the most important step. And once you've made that first step, I think everything else from there builds off that foundation. In Peoria, I was fortunate enough to take over for Bob Darling. I was his assistant coach there. So I was just making sure that I didn't break it. Coach Darling was a great mentor to me. He coached under Chuck Bisher at Peoria High School. He was an assistant coach for Wayne McLean, the late Wayne McLean, who's one of the best coaches of all time at Peoria Manual. So I knew that I had, again, that key word, relationships. I knew that I had an advantage with Bob Darling to kind of show me, hey, this is how you build a culture. This is how you build a program. And the history of Manual basketball, Peoria Central basketball, I felt like I was in a great situation just to soak it up and learn. And as Nick talked about earlier, it's a sponge. You just want to continue to soak up knowledge. And is there a better way of doing things? Does someone else have a concept or an idea? And the challenge is kind of to understand what could be applicable to your situation, because not everybody's coaching in the same environment, working with the same dynamics, coaching the same type of talents. And that's one thing in high school people don't understand. Like when they come to watch us play, they don't understand it's not college. We can't recruit our players. We get what walk through that door as students, and we have to work with our students. We don't get a hand-picked players to say, hey, would you sign to play with our school that would fit our culture, fit our style of play? So it's a constant evolution. You have to adapt, you have to evolve, and you have to identify what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses of our student athletes. This is how we can be successful. So I think the next step beyond relationships is identifying, okay, this is what we've got to work with. What do they do really well? Let's highlight those strengths and let's stay away from what they don't do very well. As Rob talked about, when we played Simeon into that 31-29 overtime game, we played a 2-3 zone the entire game. And I can't stand zone defense. Like, I hate it. But that's that's something that I broke into the state tournament with. That team, that was a strength. So why would we go against our strength? So you have to be flexible as a coach and understand, what do your players do well? What do they not do well? And you just build on those philosophies.
And just think, I thought that he was able to build those programs by those nice suits that he wears. I was gonna get me a nice suit so I could look like Mike. I thought that's what it was. Come on.
We need to do like a suit hierarchy or like a dress hierarchy, and you'd have to factor in the shoe game with the suit, the top, the bottom.
Yeah,
it would be Mike, Nick, and then I would come in like at the end because I've given up suits. I've gotten beat so many times in suits. I said I'm not wearing them anymore. I'm done with suits.
Hey, the cover of the book doesn't make it a bestseller. You gotta have some content. Have some content in those chapters.
Dropping bombs.
but
you know what?
The
cover of the books make them pick it up. I tell you that.
That is true.
Pick the book
but
up.
You know what, Mike? That's funny. The last play of the game, you guys were taking the ball out of bounds, and I was trying to tell the guys who they were guarding. And I turned my back, and I didn't even know we had the ball.
I knew you had the ball.
It was right by your bench. I know you.
Yeah.
No, really?
When we get the ball, and my assistant coach said we stole it. I said, what? So we get it, and the Dexter Williams gets it, and he shoves it in Derek's stomach like a running back. And when Derek started dribbling, I said, the game is over with y'all. He finna make this shot. I could he had a bounce in him that he hadn't had the whole game. And I told my assistants, he's finna make this shot. Because it's like, I'm tired of being out here. I'm ready to go. Let's just get the game on with. Yeah. But I really didn't even know that we had the ball. The best coaching I did the whole game was not knowing that we had the ball.
Well, you kind of mimicked what Phil Jackson did in the Utah game when Jordan had the ball, took it from Malone, and just let him play. You know, and that kind of makes me think twice. Since 2006, we had received the ball back. We called a timeout. Oh, I know. Your player took the only shot in overtime, other than Derrick Rose's. Mm-hmm. You had won the tip, and you kind of milked the clock down for one shot.
Oh, he'll do that.
He took the shot. He took what you would probably call an ill-advised shot with like 30 seconds left on the game clock. It was a little too soon, and it wasn't Derrick taking the shot. So when we rebounded the miss, we were doing the same. We were going for one shot, and you get to that point where you think about in your career, well, do I want to just let him play like you did? I called the timeout. Unfortunately, we turned it over on the inbounds pass. So that's always in the back of my mind going forward in every game that I coach. Well, I remember we played in 2006 versus Simeon for the state finals, and we called a timeout, and it backfired. So those are things as a coach, you kind of lean on your experiences, what worked and what didn't work.
Right.
Hey, Definitely. Mike, can I jump in on that real quick?
You bet.
I don't know if you remember this, but I think it was your first year at Evanston, and we had the game in the tournament, and you had that shot. Mike's team pretty much hit a half-court three to beat us. But I remember just thinking about what Mike said. I called a timeout because my guy was at the line, and he missed his first one. I called a timeout thinking maybe I'll calm him down. And I remember I think I just made him a whole bunch more nervous. And he ended up breaking the second one, which then led to Mike's, and that was one of the worst losses I've had. Just thinking we had the game won, and then just having it ripped right out of your heart ripped out of your chest. So I'm with Mike, man, and Rob. Like, I think you kind of sometimes got to let it ride and trust your guys. But sorry to join. It's Mike's.
No, you're fine. Because I would say this too. I've thought about that quite a bit. Obviously Derrick went on and is still a great NBA player.
Did he play professionally? I didn't know that.
No, yeah, he played professionly.
Okay,
he's got an NBA MVP to prove.
I just know him as the Mike Ellis killer. That's all. That's all.
Yeah, yeah, he's one of those. There's a few of those out there. But the thing that I've kind of learned over the course of time is when we're as coaches watching NBA games and watching college games, you got to kind of understand the level of talent. You know, when you're an NBA team, it's probably best to call that timeout, set up a play, because that's the best talent there is in the game. You know, you can get organized. Plan B, C, and D are still going to be some of the best players in this globe taking that shot. When you talk about the high school level, you know, I've learned over time that it may be better just to let them play, you know, because when you allow the clock to stop, the other team to coach the defense up, it's a little more challenging, and it's a further obstacle to overcome with high school players. So you have to understand, and I think a lot of the fans do that watch our IHSA games, you can't relate what the Chicago Bulls are doing to what Chicago Simeon is doing, Whitney Young is doing. It's two totally different levels and two totally different games and strategies and talents.
And it's funny you said that, Mike. I just was on another thread with some guys that I coach with Nike with, and that conversation came up, and they were saying semifinals of the state, you down one, you get the rebound, and there's 10 seconds on the clock. Do you call timeout or do you keep it? And I kept saying, we're going.
Yeah,
we're going with it. And everybody, it's about 20 of us on there. And a lot of people are like, no, we calling timeout. And I'm like, well, now I get to set up my defense. And most of the time you're going to your best player. So we know what we're doing with him, you know, and we know what we're doing with the second option. We're going to make a fourth or fifth option person have to make a play at this time. So they wasn't getting the fact of, you know, not calling the timeout. And I'm like, sometimes we can overcoach the game as well, you know, because the kids are they in a good field, so you have to let them feel it at that moment on what's going to be said or done.
I would agree too.
Rob, go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
I would agree too, and I would also, if I was involved in that conversation, I would add this. When you watch an NBA game and they come out of a timeout, what defense are they in? They're in man-to-man.
Right.
All the time.
Because everybody on that floor can knock in a shot. When you call that timeout in high school, what are you going to do? Are you going to set up two plays? Because the other high school team could very easily come out to their zone defense and not even be concerned about anything. Because your third, fourth, and fifth best shooters are less than 50%. They're going to knock in a shot 3 out of 10 times.
Right.
In the NBA level, they're knocking that shot in 6 out of 10 times. So, you know, again, it's a different type of it's a different game.
Yeah.
You know, I tell people all the time, I was a big blackjack player. I love playing blackjack. And if any of you ever played blackjack, whenever the dealer has 7, 8, 9, or 10 against a 16, I hate playing with people that sit at the table and try to decide, well, should I hit this 6 versus that 7, 8, 9, or 10? I just decided years ago, anytime I got a 6 versus a 7, 8, 9, or 10, I'm taking a hit. I don't even think about it. I just ask for a hit, and that's the way I actually deal with that particular play right there. If it's the last shot for a tie, for a win, or whatever the case might be, I'm taking it versus the timeout, because as you said, there are too many variables that go into it once you call that timeout. There are too many variables. The kids reckon, and like you said, and what we do is we do call 2 plays. Hell, the kids can't remember whether they're going to run the zone play or whether they're running the man play. And if the opposition decides to trap the ball screen because the coach has told them to trap the ball screen versus it being instinctive, it's just too many things to think about. And so I've taken that away from myself. I don't want to think about it anymore. I'm going to find the best player, whatever that might be, or the person that's doing the best thing, or we're going to go to that one play that we already know that we think can work. You know, and I think, like you said, Mike, you go back, all of us as coaches, we always go back into a game and we think, dang, if I had done this versus that. And it's just, it's a natural part of the game. But as I've gotten older in the game, I've decided now that I'm going to call these plays. If it works, man, that was a great play. If it doesn't work, somebody messed up the play on the other team. And we're done, because it's too much where you have to think about, you know, when you beat yourself over the head, should I have called the timeout or should I not have called that timeout? And I think you're right. High school basketball, put the ball in the players' hands. Let the atrocious refs make a decision sometime. Yeah, let them make a decision sometime.
So my next question is, I'm going to ask a question. Flip it over for all of us. I'm going to give you my variable of it. And you scored a basket with 6 or 7 seconds left. Do you call timeout or do you play defensively? Where do you go? So you're down. You're down and you go score it. And now you're
how much time is left? How much time is left?
I said, let's go 10 seconds. It's 10 seconds left, and they got to go the length of the floor. What do you call timeout to set up your defense, or do you let it play?
Yeah, I'm calling the timeout because I don't want them to be able to do what I wanted to do to them, get me scrambled. I want them to have to think about it. And again, I think in high school, one of the things you have to think about, a lot of times in those kinds of games, when you go up after being down, you're kind of celebrating at that point. So your transition defense is not always going to be the greatest unless you got a team that's very focused. I'm going to get a timeout. I want to talk about exactly what defensively we want to do, especially when I have them. I played Curie 2 years ago. We were down by 1. We scored. There was 7 seconds to go. We immediately got a timeout to give the kids the instructions. We have 3 fouls to give. We wanted them to foul twice. We wanted to kind of give basic pressure, keep the man in front of you. If he gets past you, grab him. Of course, we did not foul him. They got the ball all the way to the half court. We fouled. They took it out on the baseline. We said we have another foul to give. We didn't foul. The kid hit a 3 and we lost. So again, I'm calling the timeout, me personally, especially if I have another one, because I want to look at 2 things. I want to have a second one in the event that they do score, that I can call a timeout potentially to try to score again. So I'm calling the timeout.
So for me, it depends on the team I have.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is. If it's the team I have with Talen them, I don't call timeout. Because first of all, I'm kind of thinking that the other coach, this is just me thinking that he's thinking I'm about to call a timeout, and so do the players. So a lot of times they're not about to rush the ball out because they're thinking that we're about to call timeout, and the coach is too. So that team I had this year.
But Rob, but back to that point right there. I've thought about that. If it's the first half, then I'm not calling.
Oh no! I'm saying that.
No. I know. No. What I was going to say to that point, the reason that you're going to let him potentially call the timeout is because then you'll still be able to set up. I'm not going to take a chance that he's not going to call that timeout. That's what I'm going to say. I'm not going to take that chance. I'm going to get that timeout. And like you said, if you got a real veteran team like Evanston, you don't have to call timeouts ever. Just play. You don't ever have to call timeouts. Just let them play.
So I kind of think it's about personnel when you're going to call the timeout. That would be my thing.
I agree. Situational.
Yeah.
Situational, but in let's take the state playoffs. Let's make it a little more challenging. Let's take it to state playoffs when this is it.
I already know that.
Timeout. Yeah,
I call timeout.
Oh, okay.
Against you. You set up a play. The man wide open in the corner. He hit a 3, tie the game up, and send it overtime, and y'all win. See, if I don't call that timeout, y'all just go out to play.
It was no. We're gonna take the same 3. We're gonna take the same 3. We're not gonna make it.
But he's probably not gonna be that wide open.
Yeah, you're right about that. Good timeout, coach. Good timeout.
Well, I'm anxious to hear what Nick has to say.
Yeah, Nick, you've been very. Anybody with that many books has thought about this a lot.
Well, I'm gonna be honest with you. I think one of my problems has been I'm a very philosophical guy, and I think sometimes, as Rob alluded, like we can overcoach. This game is the most overcoached and undertaught game. So for me, it is situational. It depends on my personnel and how much I trust the players on the floor at that time. But I do think that, as you guys alluded, there's so many variables at the end of the game, and I think when you're offensively trying to score, you let it ride. I'm erring on the side of that. But if we do score and there's under 10 seconds, I probably most times will call the timeout. Because here's the thing, I mean, we drill like how to foul, like we go through that situation, like, hey, we're going to foul to make sure they don't get a clean 3. We're going to work on containing outer thirds. We're going to make sure we get a foul before they shoot, and we drill it. And even in practice, even after we drill it, there's still times in practice where it still doesn't go the way we want it to go. So I think, in that situation, calling a timeout, more often than not, that's what I would do. We talk about who we're trying to foul. We talk about, I'm not trying to give you all my things here, but we talk about who we're going to be attached to. We're going to try to cut out their best ball handler.
Writing notes.
Notes.
No, Ty, come on, man. I've seen these two guys way too much the past couple of years.
I'm on the notes. I'm on the notes. I got my notes going.
But for me, it just comes down to, like, if we call timeout, we know for sure we're going to get it out of their best ball handlers' hands, and we know who we're trying to foul. And I think with the timeout, we have more control over that. But like I said, if there's a team I really trust, and we got a senior-laden group, and they kind of know who we're trying to foul, and they know who we're trying to take away, sometimes I might let it go.
And for me, and just one last point, I'm not a big first half timeout guy. I actually like to get the opposition's timeouts away from them in the first half, so that we can play against fewer timeouts in the second half. So I generally go down the stretch with 2, 3, 4 timeouts.
Ty, the past two times we played, there wasn't a timeout in the first half because I just
really?
And then the second half, there was like 8 timeouts in a row.
Well, the last time I didn't call them because I wanted to get back and change shoes. That's the only reason I didn't call them the first time.
And your whole team changed shoes too. Come on, man.
No, come on. Now those guys didn't do that.
Yeah, they did. Come on.
Well, my philosophy would be 2 points. One, to piggyback on what Ty said, I would want to be in a situation where, if they make a shot to tie, or if we extend the game into overtime, they've lost a timeout. And watching NBA games, watching college games, even watching high school games, I know that 3/4 of the coaches are going to call a timeout on their own to set up a play. I just know that. So I wouldn't be in a rush to call a timeout. I would let them burn their timeout. That's one less they're going to have if we get into an extended 4-minute period of play, or 2 overtimes, or like when we played Sussex Hamilton and Patrick Baldwin's team this year, 3 overtimes. So I would let them waste that timeout to set up whatever play they would want to run. And then that leads to my second point. If they choose not to call that timeout, we're totally comfortable with that also, because the way we structure our practices all season, we have our drills. Everything's competitive for us. So in our drills, whenever one team is ahead at the end of the drill, at that segment, we flip it over and they play defense. You get a stop, you win that drill. So they've been in that scenario 100 times all season, trying to get a stop to win. So I don't feel like we need to call a timeout, especially when we know who the other team's best players are. We know who we need to stop. We know who we need to come off of. We know who we can leave open. We just let it play out. I don't feel like we're going to be unorganized. We understand, hey, if we get a stop, we win. We've been in that scenario. Now, unfortunately, if you have a Derrick Rose on your team, good luck. That's all I can say to you. You're not going to stop him.
Very interesting. Wow. Well, I think we should have a separate podcast where we just talk about strategy. I'll just get like the chart of like down and distance and just be like, what are you doing in each scenario? That's amazing. But we have steaks on the grill, so we need to wrap this up here in a minute. One of my favorite parts of this podcast is you guys have been in so many different situations over a period of decades. You've seen and coached against more players than almost anybody. And so you've got a really unique kind of data set in your head. And so I love asking about the best of tools, of skills, of players you've seen. We've talked about who's got the best post moves you've ever seen. We've talked about who is the most intense. And in fact, Coach Mike, we talked about Tim Flowers. Was he intimidating to you guys when you played him in 06?
Very much so. But honestly, he was the nicest guy. Actually, on the court, he was intimidating. But when they had won the title and we were all walking back to the Pierre Marquette, our team and Simeon's team, we were all together. That is the one thing nice about Peoria. I don't know if it's going to continue there, but that walk from Carver Arena back to the Pierre Marquette or the hotel there, I remember walking by Tim, and I was really impressed with his character. He was he had a lot of high character. I mean, he was very hey, good game, guys. He was a good kid. You know, I was impressed with him.
Yeah, that's the way he is after he terrified us. That's the way he always was. I mean, it was just like, oh my God. You were terrified of him on the court, and then he's just so nice and so congenial. Yeah, right. Why couldn't you be like that about an hour ago? Yeah, that was him.
There's a rumor that he told the bus driver to go take a seat, and he drove the team back to Chicago. Is that true? So my
AD now. You're talking to the athletic director, not the head coach. You're talking to the athletic director.
Yeah, right.
I can't answer that. But I have to fire his basketball coach.
Oh, yes.
All right, so quickly before we go here, this is pertinent to your career, Mike. In 2010, you took your team to the 3A championship game again, and your leading scorer, Ty Deal, had 11.9 points per game. That was your alpha score. You've cultivated a culture of unselfishness. And so my question, everybody, be thinking in your head, who is, but you can't name somebody that you coached, who is the best unselfish player that was maybe unselfish to a fault, that you feel like might not get the headlines, but that you felt like either as a spectator or as a coach, that you thought, wow, they made a huge impact in this game? Everybody be thinking. I want to hear a name.
You need to send these questions out before the podcast.
I like their spontaneity, though. I like the fact that it's not rehearsed. A player that, you know, kind of like, I'm trying to think of a famous example. Maybe just.
That's a tough one. That's a tough one, Gord. That's a tough one.
Like, I'll give you an example. Like, so Christian Williams is a name that we talked about a couple podcasts ago, you know, who's led St. Teresa to the state championship game when they lost to Uplift. And he went to Iowa, and then he finished up at Indiana State. 6'6", great defender. He was going to play at Portsmouth before that got canceled. But his coach always says to me, like, I wish he was more selfish. I wish that he would shoot the ball more. And so I'm curious of a player that averaged very little points per game, but that you remember just making a huge impact in a game that you win.
I mean, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, go for it, Mike.
I'll give these guys some time to think about it. For me, that player you talk about is on every one of our teams every year. And I say that in terms of not the points per game statistic, but all the other statistics. Like, I can promise you on Nick's, on Rob's, on Ty's team, every single season, we have an unselfish player that will say, hey, I'm going to play out of position so that you can put the best players on the court at the same time. You know, so it's not going to necessarily show up in points per game. I can't just pick one. Every single season, I can promise you there's one or two guys that may be point guards at the next level that are playing the 3 or the 4, or a guy that, you know, sacrifices coming off the bench who could be a guy that should start, but he does something better to give your team a lift. So he's playing his role. I don't want to say a role player. He's playing his role to an exceptional level. So to me, those are the guys that are the best unselfish players. It's not about points per games or stats or somebody that's hiding behind the limelight. It's somebody that is taking your team to another level by sacrificing something for their own personal agenda.
And this one, Gordon, might be someone on our team, you know, because just like Mike said, every team has one. Every team has one. You know, you may have one that's better than another one from one year to the next, but there's always a player that played for you that was a giver, that was a doer, and sometimes at the expense of himself. And so this one might be one that we don't get in trouble with answering from our own team.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? This is not one of those that, oh man, you said I was the least. No, this has nothing to do with being selfish. But yeah, I think all of us do. I know that I've had some every year, just like Mike said. I had a kid this year, and now I've kind of deviated from your question, but
No.
I've deviated from the pool of which we pull. But I had a kid this year, did not play in a 20-something game season, probably did not play 10 minutes. But what he did do that was just incredibly selfless, and I saw it every day. I saw it every game in practice. He was the guy who got DJ ready to play, a white kid, Matt Berzik. And I made it a point to make sure that he knew later in the year that I see it every game. I'm sitting there trying to figure out, man, he and DJ are working on his moves. He's making him better every game. And here's a kid that was literally not going to get in the game. And, it is what it is. It wasn't malicious. It wasn't mean. But you know what? He decided, I have value to this team, and watch my value. And I will tell you, a large part of DJ's success during the season, he would attribute to the work that was done in practice, in pregame in practice, and in pregame in games, because of the work that Matt Berzik did with him in those pregames. And I owe so much to him. And again, that was just an unselfish act. He could have taken a position like a lot of kids do. I'm not playing, screw this. I'm about to give me up some jumpers. I'm about to make me some threes now. And he never did that. He always made sure the DJ was ready to go.
So is he taking him to Duke with him?
No, he's going.
Could be a preferred walk-on.
No, he's going to Wisconsin. He's going to Wisconsin. He wants to go to Wisconsin.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought
I was checking. I was just so I was sitting there thinking about people on other teams, and I picked somebody from Ty's team from years ago who I thought was great as a player, Paul White. Paul White could have did a lot of different stuff on the floor. Of course, you're playing with Jaleel, and I get that. But it's a lot of stuff I think he probably could have did more, and he kind of took a step back and just went with it. I mean, even the fact when LJ came, he still took a step back and was still in the flow and did the things that he needed to do out on the floor. But I think that kind of helped the team when he took that step back. So if I had to pick somebody from a different team, I would definitely say Paul White. I thought he was somebody who was, selfless and didn't think about himself. He didn't average a whole bunch of points, and I don't think he kind of cared about the limelight. I think at some point he just wanted to win, and that's somebody who I would pick if I had to pick from a different team. I would pick Paul White.
Yeah, this question's hard. I mean, I know I have to give an answer because everyone's gone through, and I've tried to think a lot about just guys we've played. But I mean, to Mike's point for this question, because I could talk forever about. Sorry to curse there, but playing against these
guys. A good question. We're stirring the pot.
Yeah, the talent level. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I've been at Lane for 15 years, and this is my 12th year as a head coach, and we still. I mean, we have not had one Division I player come through our program, but I think we're starting to get some respect as a program that competes at a high level. And that's something that we take great pride in. And that's just because we have just this culture and this buy-in from our guys. And we don't have a guy that's gone out and scored 20 a game. We have a lot of guys that have to sacrifice some of who they are to be a part of the bigger whole. But I could think of one guy last year for us. We had a pretty good year and we're very competitive. And a guy who came in to start his senior year thinking he was probably going to get starters minutes and really put in a lot of work. And we had a junior who just came in and just did a lot of things for us with that starting unit better than that other guy did. And so the senior's name was a guy named Dominic, and didn't play a whole lot his senior year, thought he was going to play a lot. But just with the unit, the other four starters we had, Dominic's role didn't really work with those four guys as well as this junior. This junior just brought some defensive juice, was great on the glass, filled a lot of holes for us defensively. So I still, to this day, I can't get my mind outside of thinking of this guy, Dominic Sucic, that we had who played for us and just was the ultimate, just selfless and ultimate teammate.
I love it. Was that everybody? I lost track.
Yeah, that was everybody.
Let me read some stats here. I just pulled these. This is a player whose best college season it was in the Ohio Valley Conference. 10.2 points a game. That was his only season averaging double figures. He averaged 7 rebounds that year and less than half an assist. And he shot over 50%. He was .532 shooting percentage for his career. That player, Alfonso McKinney.
Wow.
And he's made it an NBA career out of that. And so if we're talking about unselfish players who don't need to score to make a big impact, that's the blueprint. 2 years in the Ohio Valley, 2 years in the Horizon League with Green Bay. And his final year at Green Bay, 8 points, 5 rebounds.
That's impressive.
Wow.
That was Kiefer Sykes was the leading scorer on that Green Bay team at that time.
Oh, yeah, and he had, I think, 42 points a game maybe?
Yeah. But Kiefer Sykes was the best. He was the best player on that team. I remember going to see them play UIC. And that's everybody was going to see Kiefer play. And Alfonso was on that team as well. I think they had another guy from Chicago on that team from the south suburbs as well. He had 3 Chicago guys.
Really?
Team. Yeah.
And was that, remind me, was that Brian's, was he still coaching there or had he gone to Bradley at that point? Wardle?
Brian Wardle was still there. He was still there then, yeah.
Okay.
That was his that was his last year.
What did Brian Wardle and Bill Laimbeer have in common? This will wrap up the show today.
Wow.
The first name started with B. I'm just
I think they're both from Clarendon Hills, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, wow.
A lot of people don't know. In the Bad Boys documentary, they talk about Clarendon Hills, I think. So that's a little irrelevant trivia nugget to wrap things up. Guys, any final thoughts before we get back to our steaks and our enjoying the outside atmosphere? So Ty's making us jealous here.
No. I was messing up, but I'm gonna do. You know, we missed Nick today.
We did.
Yeah.
Irvin, because he's out bringing in all the Chicago players to Macomb, but
DJ
Mike
Stewart and Adam Miller are next, I'm hearing.
I told him that in a text message today. I said I can't wait. But Mike and Nick, we really appreciate you guys. Normally this is normally Rob's job to thank you guys. Mine is to welcome you. But really we appreciate you guys coming and being on with us today. Again, we have so much respect for the both of you. That's the reason for us having you here. I tell you, I learned so much from watching Mike and his program. They are a class act. I mean, I had an opportunity to play against them. They play well. They follow game plans. His teams are always immaculately dressed in uniform. So again, we appreciate you coming on and being with us today. We consider you a friend in the business. And Nick, again, you're in our conference, and we love coming to you guys to play. You guys supported us in some things that we were doing a couple of years ago, and I will be forever indebted to you. Both of you guys have been perennial participants in the Chicago Elite Classic. And of course, we thank you guys for that. And again, it's just a great opportunity to get together and talk some basketball. We love to be able to do it more and to do it in different ways, but today was a day and a way to get on. And we just thank you guys so much for joining us today.
Yeah, I appreciate you having us.
No, we thank you guys for coming on. This is huge for us. We're trying to break some barriers here that people don't understand, that we all here for the same common goal, and that's to help children to be successful and get over to the next level. And I don't think people see that enough. So Gordon and Nick kind of put this whole thing together, and then they called me and Ty, and then they came up with the name. And like they said, we went through coaches who have won the state championship first, and then now it's been my job to pretty much find the next coaches to come on.
He's the booker.
And we started
He's the producer.
We started picking you guys' name popped right in my head for the next segment. So and then we all have to agree on it, and all 3 people, myself, Ty, and Nick, said, great, it'll be a great podcast, make sure we get them, this, that, and other. And like I said, when I called you guys, you were straight on, yes, I can do it, and we really appreciate you taking out your time to do it with us.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. I mean, Nick and Rob and Ty, some of the three of the best in the business to do it. So I'm honored, to share the stage with you 3.
Yeah, just to echo Mike's point, incredible honor. I remember starting my coaching career and looking up to all of you. And, I'm glad Nick's not on today, because probably the worst loss of my career was against his Morgan Park.
Let me tell you something. They don't have a problem with beating you by 100. No. Don't worry about that. No,
I mean, I still wake up in cold sweats because of that game. But no, I mean, it's an incredible honor. And if I would have thought, when I started my coaching career, I mean, I went to Lane and been trying to grow this thing. But when I started, to think I'd be a chance to talk with three of the best in the state and just talk hoops and be respected in this community with you guys, it means a great deal. So thank you.
I just think, this is one of the most difficult times, in our lifetimes for our country right now. And this podcast has been so just nourishing, I guess, to me on a deep level, because this is what it's all about, is bringing people together. Basketball brings people from totally different backgrounds into community. It's not just about playing the game. It's about building relationships, like you said, Mike. And so I'm going to do whatever I can to support people like you four here and Nick, because you guys are the answer to so much of what is just really violently, offensive that we see out in society today. So I just want to thank you four, because you're just so, you were the antidote to this. So thank you. Nick, go ahead.
Can I just say one last thing? And
yeah.
I'm sorry to end on such a serious note, but with everything happening outside of COVID, with just the racial tension in our country, I do want to just say to Rob and Ty, being strong African-American men in our city means a lot. And I just being in the Chicago Public League and what we do with the game, it's so important. And I'm indebted to you guys for being who you are, and just to continue to hope that we can have those tough conversations to help get this thing right. So
thanks.
Thank you. And there is definitely a need to have that conversation. And unfortunately, we did not get to that today, and that was on our docket. But I think we'll have an opportunity to do it down the road. And we appreciate for all of you. And I think so many times, as two white men, we're really three white men, the ability to have this conversation, to be able to talk about it, is what's important. Because the one thing that I say to people, either you are against racism or you are a racist. It's one or the other. You cannot be in the middle. You can't kind of be pregnant. And so Mike and Nick, and again, I know that you guys deal with sport, and that's one of the things that Gordon said. Sports bring us all together. So you guys actually have a pretty good idea about the Black experience, because you're around African-American players and students, and so you have an understanding. So many of unfortunately your white brethren don't. And I'm not saying people that you know particularly, but just white people in general. And I think it's a whole conversation that we clearly need to have and can have, and appreciate you guys for bringing that up. And I'll say that Mike is my favorite coach, because they have the best school colors. I just wanted to say that. I just wanted to say that.
Go blue, go orange.
Am I stirring the pot if I show this picture here of me mascotting against Mike's team here?
Oh my God. Well, but I don't.
Look at that air. Look, I'm like 6 inches off the ground there. Look at that.
I like it.
And then this was, I got another one we got an upgraded one my senior year, but I had to bring that up at the end because I don't want to drive a wedge between our guests. Ty's usually the one that chases our guests away at the beginning.
No, not me.
Chris Head hung up 4 times. We had to get him back in here.
Because he called that traveling call. I mean, come on. That's not a travel. That's a good move. Oh, come on. We're not going to drudge up all those bad memories. Please, let's not do that.
But yeah, like I told you guys, this is just basketball. We just come on and we just talk and enjoy basketball. We all got the same common goal. And again, I want to thank you guys, because this has been Gordon and Ty, this has been one of our best ones. And all of them have been really good. Mm-hmm. But this has been a really good one, as well. And it kind of takes us over the top when people are watching, and then like Gordon said, Mike, you bring a difference, because you were down south at Peoria, so people from that area are going to see you and see this on. And Nick, with your relationships with USA Basketball, when people see or you put it out that you were on that, it just brings it out. And what Gordon and Nick put together, we're just trying to evolve it and make it a big thing. And you guys are right now the people that help us do that. So it's not just us three, me, Ty, and Nick. We need other voices on to help, understand. And people can see that we all at the end have the same common goal. That's it. We just been fortunate enough to win championships, and you guys know for a fact that's not an easy task, because you've been in that situation. But we just want people to understand that we all have the same common goal, no matter what school it is. We have the same common goal. And I don't think people get that. I think they think it's different at Evanston than it is at Simeon. It's no different when it comes to basketball. We all have that same common goal, and that's for the kids. You know, it ain't about the thing. We're not quitting because you didn't win. You know, you still there fighting and trying to get the young men to do better and to be able to go to college for free and those type of things. And I think people kind of get that mixed up at times. Good.
Man, I don't want to end it here. We got so much more to talk about.
No, the important part is I have to, because Great Escape closes at 6, and I've got to be in there.
Okay.